want to ask anything over voice, just raise your hand and jump on and have a chat. All right, so I'll just briefly go over what we'll be covering today. My name's Adam. I've been working with Alloy for over 9 years as a senior system engineer. Now, today's session will be a bit shorter than my last, and we'll be covering the basics of what to do to get direct routing configured on Microsoft Teams tenant, on your Microsoft Teams tenant for you and your client with AlloyVoice. And we'll go through some configuration options and parameters that you need to set up and some options like that. So firstly, we'll just go through some basics. What exactly is direct routing? Why isn't it just called SIP trunking? Direct routing is the ability for inbound and outbound calling within Microsoft Teams. It's the process in which calls initiated within Microsoft Teams are routed through the PSTN network. It uses a session border controller as a router in the middle to interconnect the SIP trunks between Microsoft Teams and the upstream provider's SIP network to allow connectivity between both networks. Honestly, it is almost essentially the same thing as a SIP trunk. What it allows you essentially just the ability to have your Microsoft Teams users, endpoints, video conferencing systems, the ability to make and receive outbound and inbound calls just on the your normal telephony network. So once you have chosen your your direct routing provider, us or whoever you end up going with, there are several things you do need to configure within Microsoft Office 365 itself. There are things to configure such as the domain, verification of the DNS, setting up users to confirm and activate that the DNS is correct, setting up the correct licensing for each user so that the users will be on the correct plans so direct routing will work for them, voice policies, and dial plans. After you've selected the provider, you will be given information to add to your Microsoft 365 tenant to add and verify the domain. This can be done via a few methods, via the adding a TXT record or MX record. Usually this is done by a provider and they will give you the information to put in your Office 365 tenant, as this is generally done on their end, and we will do this for you. But if you were to do this on your own, as in if you were hosting your own, doing your own session border controller and all those things, you need to do it yourself. Through AlloyVoice, we set this up all for you. So we would through your setup process, we would give you the information you need to put here on your domain, here on your Office 365 tenants, and then you just need to go through the verification. Now, this needs to be done after it's set up on our end. So once we have all the information set up from the server side of things, so basically we have on our end, we need to set up either a TXT record, MX record, then your Office 365 will then verify that record to be true, so then that can be verified. If they don't match, it won't verify and you won't be able to get past this step. Now, after the domain is verified, you must then add a user to this domain so you can activate the domain and confirm it's verified. So to do this, you need to go to the admin center and then go to one of your users. You go to the add user section, and then from here, you essentially set up a dummy user. So you fill out any name, but the one thing you need to make sure of is that the domain that you set up is on the new domain that you've just verified. So you wouldn't put this on your standard business or company domain because it's not what we're trying to activate here. So it would just be like new user at like alloyvoice.com.au for your direct routing. Now, so you just, everything else, it doesn't really matter. It's only a temporary user. So after it's all finished, you can remove this user later. So it doesn't have to be anything special. It can just be temporary. It doesn't matter. But it's just this point, you just need to make sure that the main drop-down list is set up for the domain that you just did in the previous step. And then you just click finish. So once you've done this, you need to go on to the next step, which is you do need to start assigning licenses. If you don't do this step, you won't be able to route calls. So this is an important step. Once you do this, you also sometimes have to wait 30 minutes to an hour. Sometimes it happens instantly. I've found in the past that sometimes it can take an hour, sometimes it's 30 minutes. I find it's better just to, once you set this up, just wait an hour, or options afterwards. The next steps sometimes aren't there or things fail, just set up the user and just wait. I've found works best. Okay, so to assign licenses, you do need to be an admin of the Office 365 tenant, saying that you do need to be an admin to do all the previous steps, but some organizations have different people who do configurations and different people who do licenses, etc. All right, so you need to then, for users who you want to have access to direct routing, which is, again, inbound, outbound calling, you need to assign a few different licenses to them. First one they'll need is a Microsoft phone system license, as well as a Microsoft Teams license. The last one is either Office or Microsoft, E1, E5, E3 license. Honestly, there's about, I don't know, 15, 20 different licenses for this one that are all bundled together. They've got the M5 licenses, M3s. There's a whole list of different licenses that are bundled together that will work. There's a list on the Microsoft website on which ones are okay, and a lot of them will actually have the Microsoft Teams license bundled with it. So when you are going through the licenses, if you don't have them already, I think there's a link on the Microsoft website that shows you which ones will be work for, direct routing or Teams calling. But, as long as it's got Microsoft phone system, I don't think is bundled with anything else. So that's sort of like a separate license. But Microsoft Teams and the Office licenses, I do find are bundled together with quite a lot of different licensing packages. So just take a look at which one is better for you, as you might not need to buy the most expensive, E1, E3, E5 license to get it working per how many users you've got. And once you have purchased that, you need to assign the license to the user. So in that, you need to go to the admin center, and then you just go to the specific user and then the licensing tab. So for this particular screenshot you can see on the screen, this one is working for direct routing, and they've only needed 2 particular licenses, which is the Office 365 Business Standard and the Microsoft 365 Phone System license. Now with these 2 licenses, that will work for inbound and outbound calling with direct routing. So as I said, before, it's bundled together. So those 2 will work, but they're not the only 2 that will work. There's a whole heap of combinations. So just take a look at which ones suit you, because you might not need all the added functionality of that particular license. All right, so now there's a few things you need to do now, which unfortunately you have to do via PowerShell to enable some features for direct routing, which you cannot actually do at the moment through the admin center. Certain features such as enterprise voice, assigning telephone numbers to users, and some voice route policies. So what we need to do is you need to enable and install Microsoft, so Windows PowerShell, and it needs to be version 5.1 or higher, with .NET Framework 7.2 or later, and then need to do the installation of the Microsoft Teams module. So this is done via PowerShell, and it's just the command on the screen there. Also, I've just done a snipping tool of installing the module via PowerShell there. Now, there is a step-by-step guide on where to get all of those particular modules, like the PowerShell modules, the .NET Framework modules, all those things on that link below. If you can't copy it from the screen, probably. So if you Google, installing Microsoft Teams module, it's pretty much the first link that pops up into Google. Or if you want that link, just send me a message and I'll just paste it to you. It just goes through all the prerequisites you need to load the modules that will allow you to connect to your Microsoft Teams tenant to make these configuration changes to get your direct routing to work. All right, so enterprise voice. So this is really important. So if you do not enable this, your users will be able to receive inbound calls, but they won't have a dial pad. So on the bottom left, I just did a screenshot of a user without enterprise voice enabled. They don't have a dial pad and they're not too happy. And one on the right-hand side has enterprise voice enabled. And as you can see, they've got the dial pad, telephone number, place where they can bring numbers and park calls. So the way to enable this is done via PowerShell, and the example is I'm just enabling it for myself. So that's just once you've connected with the Microsoft Teams module, that's the command you use to enable enterprise voice on the user. So happens a bit, as in you will sometimes get your users set up and you might miss this step. And what will happen is they'll come back and say, I don't have a dial pad. And it's almost always because the enterprise voice isn't enabled on that user. And it's just that command line with the user. So essentially, it's just that same command line, and all you do is change the identity of the particular user in Teams who you need to enable that for. So again, there is that syntax is on the Microsoft website, but I can post it too if you need. But without it, your users will just say, hey, I can get calls, but I can't make calls. So you just need to enter that line. Might be good if you don't want your users to make calls, if they're an inbound call center, I guess, and you don't want them to be able to dial out. But I would imagine most people want the ability to make inbound and make outbound calls. So if you want to make outbound calls, you need to make sure enterprise voice is enabled, and that's how you do it. Again, that takes about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how quickly Microsoft syncs in the background. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's not, and users sometimes needs to log out, log back in once it's enabled. So just be mindful of that. Next, looking at how to assign the telephone number. So at this stage, assigning directing dials through direct routing, this has to be done via PowerShell as well. With the example above, or on your screen, that's just me assigning a telephone number to my user. So that is just assigning the number of 03-8562-9040 directly to my extension. So when that is dialed, it will call my Teams client. Once that is done via PowerShell, you'll be able to see it then in the on your Teams client. We'll say your number is that, and you'll also be able to see it in the Teams admin center. But before you add it in PowerShell via that command, you won't see it. Now, it's a bit of a pain, but I imagine it might be something that they will add in the future. I know you can add DIDs if you use their hosted service or use through like their Office 365 hosting service or their conferencing bridge. You can add DIDs on the GUI, but with direct routing, you have to add it via PowerShell, and that's just the line to do it. You just type in the phone number with those parameters, and that's it. And then you can start using that phone number for that user. And yeah. So voice routing policies. So these are essentially, these can be done via PowerShell or via the admin's team center, I've found. So via PowerShell, I do that personally, but it looks like you can definitely do it recently via the GUI. So down the bottom, I've just got a number pattern match for 000 to go out via a particular session border controller. And on the top there, I've just got a GUI match of any number to go out via a certain AlloyVoice session border controller and to match a PSTN record. So these are essentially done via regular expression. So if you want to do, you can do, all your normal sort of regular expression dial plans. If you have different routes, different, you want people to have access to different numbers, or you want to add, 0307s, or, drop numbers and so on. You can do all that kind of stuff if you want. But it's needed, or again, when you press dial on your Microsoft Teams client, it's not going to know how to get out from there. So there's some guides on the Microsoft website to guide you through that, but we can also help you as well. So we know how to do all those and your dial plans and your expressions for what you need. So, just we're happy to help with that. So as mentioned, we do provide direct routing to our AlloyVoice resellers. We offer two different types of plans, and they are with rated calls and unlimited plans. Now, if you want any information on these, you can talk to myself or another member of Alloy. We offer very good commission rates for our resellers, as well as good support networks, and we provide assistance for the entire process. So that means, we'll help you through all the stuff I've just mentioned, get your users up and running, set your dial plans, make sure all your PowerShell stuff works, and get you leave it with you so you're able to make and receive inbound calls and help you assign your numbers where they need to go and so on. So we all do that, get you up and running with AlloyVoice. That's essentially it from me. That's just an overview of what we provide and how to set it up from, the team side of things. If you do have any questions about it, just, let me know at the moment. Just let me know, and just any questions, just ask, essentially, if there are any. Yeah, I mean, it's the AlloyVoice Teams option. They do require the Microsoft license separately. It's not included with the usage. So you need to have those on the particular Microsoft side of things. Yeah. So you don't get like an E5 or E3 license if you buy a rated SIP trunk there in the RAV. Yeah, so resellers earn commissions on their calls as well as the services as well. So anytime their resellers make calls, they will get a commission on that, as well as the monthly plans. So what it means is they'll get commission on, just if they're on the rated plan, they'll get commissions on each channel and also on each of the phone calls that they make. So it's quite, they they get quite a bit, quite a generous commission essentially on that. So, and anytime, even number porting. So if they port numbers in, they get commission on that. So it's essentially they'll get commission on every single part of the process. So it's not just on telephone calls; it's on the monthly charges for their their SIP trunks, their 1-300 number setups, their monthly plans, international calls. It's everything. So it's not just bound to their call rates. So they get across the whole board. Beneficial to go to Teams Voice compared to SIP only. Well, Teams Voice routes your calls via Teams. So in Teams, you want to be able to make outbound and inbound calls to the PSTN network. So when you get Teams Essentially, you don't have that ability to call outside of your organization or side of your you can call other teams organizations, but you can't essentially say, hey, I want to call a company with a phone number or ring a mobile, so to speak. So you need it's essentially an uplink to the outside world. Can't we register a SIP trunk to Teams? Why do we need to use direct routing? Because you can't. I'm sure there's a lot of technical reasons for that. I mean, you can't. There's no sort of direct SIP capabilities to go between teams and like a SIP provider. Essentially, you need to have a session border controller in the middle, so it can then transcode between the SIP messages and the Teams and Teams itself. So Teams doesn't use SIP to talk between itself. So Teams has its own codecs, whereas SIP uses your normal SIP signaling and SIP messaging. So Teams can't sort of do a direct connection to a SIP provider, and they need to use a session border controller to do the transcoding between both. Is my understanding of that. If you can add to that, Scott, I'm all ears.
No, that's exactly right, Adam.
Okay.
So Teams doesn't support a direct SIP registration. It uses different protocols. So we need to have that session border controller in the cloud to be able to transcode between a standard SIP trunk to a connection that Teams actually recognizes. So, and what direct routing carriers provide is that SBC in the cloud. So it saves you as resellers having to actually set up an SBC yourself and pay the cost to install, manage, and utilize an SBC. By going with a direct partner such as AlloyVoice, we provide that SBC in the cloud for you. So we basically do all the heavy lifting for you guys, and you can just sell our services to your customers.
All right. Give another minute to see if anyone else has any other questions. But again, if you are interested in hearing more about it, just email myself or one of the Alloy team members, or come through, give us a call. We can more than happy to help you out in relation to more in-depth information if you need it, or commission structures, commission rates, all that kind of stuff. So just
one thing to add there too, Adam, is that we do have demo trunks available. So if you do want to trial the direct routing service, it's something that we can also do for you as well.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening to me talk about AlloyVoice and direct routing. Again, any questions, email me, email the team, and we'll be more than happy to help you out or set you up with a demo trunk, and we'll go from there. All right, thanks for your time and have a good day. Thank you.